Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to today's panel. My name is Maria Dismondy, and I am the publisher at Cardinal Rule Press. And we are located here in Michigan, but we do mighty things all over the United States. And we just released a book last week titled Camouflage Mom, written by Sarah, who is in attendance today, Hovorka. And what we like to do when we have book releases is we like to find authors of similar books to really lift their voices up as we are lifting the voice of our own author. We think that in the industry, we are truly better together. So today we have Sandra and Shermaine joining us for this special panel. So ladies, what I would love to do to begin is I would love for you in this Military Families panel to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about one or more of your books. So let's begin with Sandra.
Okay. Am I muted?
You are good.
Okay. I am Sandra Miller Linhart. I was married to the military for over 20 years, meaning my husband was in the Army. I have 5 Army brats, ranging from 40 to 25 now. So they're all girls. I wrote a chapter book series early in 2000 called The Elementary Adventures of Jones, Jeep, Buck, and Blue, about 2 Army brats who have to, it's their adventures. Anyway, and 4 deployment books, Daddy's Boots and Mama's Boots, which deal with why is Daddy leaving or why is Mommy leaving, and 2 what if books that address the anxiety of reuniting after and reintegrating with the military. And they're all the picture books are illustrated by Tana Fox. She's extremely talented. She has written 2 picture books herself, My Mommy as a Sailor and My Daddy as a Sailor, as well as illustrated Jesse Franklin's book, My Daddy Sleeps Everywhere. So I got a really good illustrator. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Sandra. What I really love about your introduction is you have covered many different areas. You covered a chapter book series. You talked about deployment. You talked about the reintroduction, the what if books. You said you have 2 of those, which
Right.
really relates to Sarah's book, Camouflage Mom, is that what if. It's the feelings of reconnecting. So let's go ahead and have Sarah introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hovorka, and this is the book Camouflage Mom. So this book is based on my real experience as a child when my mom went away to boot camp, and it was very sudden for me. And I didn't really know what was happening or even how I felt about it until she came back, and I learned that everything was different, but our relationship was still there. I write primarily picture books. I have another one out called Unicycle Dad, which is a similar style to Camouflage Mom, except this is about my life as a child with my dad. I like to write stories that I feel emotional about, and that kids can hopefully connect with, and the adults that read with them too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Shermaine, tell us a little bit about you and your journey and your books.
Hi, everyone. My name's Shermaine Perry-Knights. I have lived and traveled all over the world as an Air Force brat. We PCS more times than I could count. I think it was maybe 13 or something like that. So from birth all the way through, military kid. And I wanted to write the stories that I wanted as a child. I think we do a better job now with more support around families overall. But before it was just, hey, you guys are moving to Italy. When we move, we're moving tomorrow. So I wanted to write the And That's Okay series to talk from a child's perspective of what PCS looks like, what it looks like to lose a friend, to lose a toy during PCS, what it looks like to reunite with friends, making friends, learning new cultures, because we are third culture kids. And so I have about 35 books now, but from chapter books to picture books, I really love making our world accessible to those outside the base gates. And I want to build empathy for military families. So this fall, I'm doing another book called The Case of the Missing ID, because if you've been a part of the military community, you know how stressful that is when your kid gets their first ID and when they lose it somewhere like the PX.
Wow. Okay. So as the facilitator, Maria Dismondy, I don't have family in the military. I have zero experience with military families, and I have just learned so much. Wow. And I just realized, Shermaine, from your introduction, why I'm so grateful for this opportunity to speak with the three of you, because like you said, it's creating empathy for military families. So in attendance, we have Sandra, who is a military mother, and then we have Shermaine and Sarah, who are both children and who have had those different experiences. So this is just a really great experience, and I'm so thankful for you being here. Now, this is going off script, but both Shermaine and Sandra have mentioned military brats, and I need to know, why do we call them military brats? Tell me.
I've heard different titles, but I heard British Regiment in Training as one of the acronyms.
Okay.
Well, I'm old school because I'm quite a bit older than y'all. But it's just a term, kids of a military member who have to readjust everywhere they go, and it's kind of hard. It's really hard. I know that my own girls, you kind of, this is my opinion, you kind of get bratty when you have to leave, because I would be, and it was stressful for the mothers as well, because I'm not a mother of a military member, I'm the mother of the brats, but they're not brats, but it's excuse me, it's your life is upset. Well, for us, it was every 3 to 5 years, and we moved all over, and we didn't know. And then one minute we were going here, and the next minute we're going there, and it's hard to keep your kids involved in everything, and there kind of gets an attitude. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I like her acronym better.
So it's kind of twofold. The acronym. So the term military brat has an acronym, but it also can mean those attitudes that come around having to be shifted from here to there and everywhere. And Shermaine, you said that sometimes you'd wake up in the morning and your family would say, "Okay, it's time. We're up and at 'em." Like that is, I mean, my controlling heart like crunched when you said that. I was like, "Oh, that sounds so difficult." It really does. So this is a little off script, but let's kind of move into the military family life. So this is, it's definitely a question I have for all of you, but let's talk about the moving around, and what kind of feelings that brought up. And maybe you have a specific memory that you want to share with us about the moving around in military living. Sarah, did you move around a lot?
No, actually, no, shortly after my mom went to boot camp and joined the military, my parents actually got divorced and I stayed with my dad. So she would leave and come back, but I stayed put. So I don't really consider myself a military brat in the same way that maybe the others do. I mean, I went to bases with my mom and went to the different like military stores and events and stuff. So I'm familiar with some of the stuff, but my life was not it was not moving around.
Okay. And
She would just be in and out.
yeah, well, let's talk about your experience visiting a base. What did that feel like? Were you really proud of your mom, or were you, I don't know, a lot of kids are embarrassed by parents at times in their lives. Like what were some feelings that came up when you visited those bases?
I didn't feel embarrassed. I guess I was more interested. I mean, everything, I mean, as a kid, it kind of felt a little bit like a playground. Everything's big there. The people are big, the buildings are big, and there's like a lot of stuff. So it was just interesting looking at everything. You know, the weapons and stuff that they're dealing with, and sometimes different vehicles and all the people in the uniform. So it was like more so curiosity and just
You're part of
exploring.
you were part of something really special that not everyone is a part of. So I can see how curiosity would play into that. Thank you. How about you, Sandra? What did you tell me a little bit about military family living?
It was, you know, I grew up in the same place for 26 years. I was born and raised in the same town. And at 26, we were stationed at Fort Irwin, California at the National Training Center in the middle of the Mojave Desert. I went from the mountains to the Mojave Desert and I was 8 months pregnant, or it was horrible. And I didn't know what to expect. And everybody says you know what you got when you married into it, but that's not true because it's a whole different community. It is when I it's overwhelming. And it's like she said, as an adult though, as an adult woman, and you go into this life that everybody knows what they're doing, it's overwhelming. And then you have to learn all new rules and it's not hard. It's just some things are difficult. And then when you have the questions from your kids is like, why is dad leaving all the time? Why is he helping somebody else? Why isn't he here to help us? And it's like, well, he's a dad, he has a job. And what she said about the big buildings and stuff, it's true. We were stationed at Fort Benning, and we had a foreign exchange student from France come stay with us, and she was like, by that time it was commonplace. I was in it for 20 years and my girls were in high school and two little ones, and she was really overwhelmed with the soldiers marching in the streets and the buildings and and I took her bless my heart. I took her to the Ranger graduation, which is an amazing display, but she was terrified and I had no idea it would terrify her. But I guess in other countries, they don't let them see the military perform and whatnot. So I had to, and that's how Daddy's Boots was born, because I had to explain to her that it's, soldiers are just doing a very unique function for the world, and they're just daddies. And I sorry I scared you. But it was she by the time she left, she understood. But when you get into it, you don't realize that the rest of the world doesn't know what you do or what your spouses or dads or whatever do. They don't understand. They have this perceived notion, and it's not like that at all.
And that's a really, it's a loaded question. Why is daddy helping others and why isn't he here with me? Like that's a valid question. And your answer is so honest and true. It is his job. And not many people have jobs that take them away from their families for months at a time, and put themselves in danger, like firefighters and police officers, pilots. Interesting. Shermaine.
Yeah, so it's all I've ever known. So the base just feels like home. Being outside the base walls is so different, because when you're interacting with people that are not a part of the community and you're explaining things like PCS or orders, people go, what? So what I wanted to do with one of my books called I Move a Lot and That's Okay was to literally define what it is. And it means PCS is permanent change of station, because you are stationed somewhere, not living somewhere. And so I thought it was important when I'm talking to people that are not a part of the community to explain some basic terminology. Orders meaning rules by the big boss, and you can't say no. So from a very kid-friendly perspective, I'll just give you an example. I already was living at my third PCS or move by first grade. We had already been to 2 different countries, 2 different states. A lot of movement, right?
Yeah.
And then our military schools, people think, oh, is it because you're bad you're in military school? I was like, no, there's an entire school system that's actually has better scores math and science wise than most of the schools in the United States. It's a statistic, it's true. And I was like, it's because you're a part of the community, not because you did anything bad, as opposed to what people may deem to be a military school. And so it's a lot of unlearning, like Sandra said, trying to clarify some things that are misconceptions about it. By 4th grade, I was already at my 4th base, 3 different countries. 4th grade was in 2 different schools. I mean, just you're trying to remember, where are you from? You just never ask us that, because nobody knows where they're from. You just say, what feels like home last? And so it's really trying to educate people to understand this is our experience. It's different, but it's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it. Living in your entire life in one place is wonderful, but I don't know what that feels like, because every year or 2 we moved. So I was like, what does that mean? You literally know everybody your entire life at the same school. What's that like? I'm like, because that's not my norm.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we're talking about this, you know, as an outsider, it sounds like your inspiration came from personal experiences. If your inspiration came from something other than a personal experience, can you share that, please? Maybe you saw something, or maybe, you know, Shermaine, like you were talking about, how people are confused and they have misconceptions. Was that something that you experienced? Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
know you're all inspired by your own experiences. So I'm just trying to see if there's something else we can kind of cover here.
Quite a bit. I think Sandra kind of mentioned it, where you mentioned your dad is military, your mom is military. People, they instantly default to think a soldier on the front line in the middle of combat. And I would say, well, mine was in IT. He worked in network security, and they would go, huh? You can do that? And I would say, any job you can have out in the real world, as you might call it, you can have inside the military. You could be a supply person giving pencils and paper. You can be a firefighter. And they go, really? So like you said, just that idea of the misconceptions, even based off other experiences, help you to just create the stories.
And do you have a book that you can point out? I see a lot of books behind you, but is there a specific book that kind of talks about those misconceptions?
Yeah, the I move a lot and that's okay.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Thank you.
So I wanted to add something to that. I have kind of a publishing story. Daddy's Boots won the Dixie Lee Connor Best Children's Manuscript in 2005, which got me an agent from New York that I'd never met, and a contract with Random House. And I was in touch with, I'm not going to say names, but somebody in Random House. They had me change that book no less than 40 times. And by the time they were done, it wasn't even my book. And the editor that I was working with, she wanted me to change the book to say that Daddy would go. They put the gun in there, and I said, okay, well, if Daddy's going to carry a gun, then the police is going to carry a gun. And if you read the book, you'll understand what I'm saying. Then she said, they want Daddy to kill somebody. And I said, excuse me, no. And she goes, that's what they do, isn't it? Isn't that what they do? And I said, my husband has never shot anybody. He's, you know, other than targets, he's never shot anybody in his job. That's not a thing. And so it just hit me that, and she was from New York. So, and they live in a little bubble, nothing against people in New York, but they have a community in and of themselves as well. And she didn't even know what a search and rescue worker was. And this is right after Katrina. So I'm like, okay. Long story short, they dumped me, but I'm okay with that, because then I put the book back the way it was, and with changes, and it was all for the better. But I just thought that was pretty interesting that an adult woman wouldn't, you know.
Well, and
And
that's a really great, I'm glad that you shared that, because you stood up for your voice and your message, and it was going in a completely different direction, and it didn't feel authentic. And you said, this isn't, I mean, you said they dumped you, but I think it was probably a blessing in the end, because now
Yes.
you were able to put your story back into, you know, a way that it really needed to be. And let's go into family members. Let's talk a little bit about the effects on family members of growing up in a military family, military living. You know, a lot of people who will be watching this in the fall will be students who live in military families as well. So kind of keeping that in mind. How do challenges in a military family affect children? And what is some of the advice that we can put out there for children to feel connected, for children to feel, you know, empowered, and to feel, you know, to get through some of those hard times?
so I can speak as a mother. My oldest daughter went to 3 high schools, and it was really hard. She went to one high school, then we were transferred, and she had to take gym over again because it was named something different in the different state. And then while we were there, we got on post housing, so we moved again. And then she was on the close to, she went to a different high school basically because we were in a different zone. So all those challenges for her, she, repeating the classes that she learned in the other places, but because of the coding or the naming or whatever, it was very frustrating for her. And it was frustrating for me as a mom, because I knew she was this intelligent, beautiful girl that just wanted to have the experience everybody else had in their high school. She had 3 sets of different friends, and it's hard, especially in high school, to reintegrate and present yourself without being the oddball. And especially if you're military in a public school, you're kind of an oddball, because people don't understand. All of my children kind of had that experience. It was just because my oldest, that was our first experience with, what do you mean she has to take gym 3 times? She's that's not a core class, what are we doing here? I think since then, Charisse could probably explain how it is now, but I think since then they've changed it so it's not quite so bad. I don't know.
Well, it sounds very similar. Shermaine, I'll have you go next, but it sounds very similar to children who come to school who are English as a second language. And as a former teacher, I had a student come to me who knew 0 English. He was extremely smart though, right? So, but it took him a while because he was learning the language while also needing to learn the content that we gave him. So, Shermaine, go ahead.
Yeah, well said. So I'm a former teacher as well, former middle school teacher. I think it has a heavy impact on us, especially in terms of school, in terms of like learning a new culture, really trying to figure out still who you are as you're growing up and embed yourself into another culture, because that's part of your job, to fit in, not causing trouble, and support your service member by doing what you're supposed to do. By 4th grade, it was 5 different schools for me, and they said for us, there's statistics, 6 to 9 times you will transition schools, most military kids, from kindergarten to graduation. Very true. I had more schools than that. Almost had a secondary high school, and I was like, please, can we just stay here? And we're overseas, but can we just stay here? Because there's so much transition. And to Sandra's point, a lot of those courses we're retaking, which is frustrating, right? Because the Dodds schools are a little bit different than some of the schools stateside, but now they have something that we didn't get to benefit from, but the next generation will call the Military Interstate Compact, I think it is, where schools, many of them stateside, must honor all of what we have on our transcripts so that students are not feeling the extra frustration and not feeling penalized because you serve as well. You just serve in a different capacity than the actual service member.
Fantastic. I'm applauding that. That is wonderful. That is really great. Something that came up for me when we were talking about this is, Sarah, your book talks a lot about feelings and how, you especially at the very end of your book have some tips for separation and how to cope with that. But I think the importance of really expressing your feelings, and the little girl, Sarah, in your story expresses her feelings through actions and not always through words. And did you experience that growing up as well?
Yeah, especially since for me, the experience with the military was different since, as I said, I didn't move around, so I wasn't integrated in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So it was much more confusing. It was more like, what's going on? What am I doing? And how does this affect my life?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I reacted in different ways, and some of that was by ignoring it or even pushing it away. Whereas like my younger brother embraced it more, wanted to dress up like a soldier and was more involved with some of the things that my mom was telling him about. And when I wrote the book, I was mostly focused on, what about my relationship with my mom. I wasn't necessarily setting out to write a military story, but it is another aspect of a military family that maybe doesn't get as much, it's maybe not supported as much, that sometimes the kids are sort of left behind, and the military person, goes off and sort of comes back, and it's not quite as integrated all the time. And that's okay too. It's just a little bit of a different kind of a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and like you said, you didn't write it necessarily for a military audience, but it can really be for any audience, for children who are experiencing change in their lives and emotions, the importance of finding a way to talk about those emotions or express those emotions in a healthy manner, for sure. And I think community is a great way of doing that, finding a trusted adult to be able to talk about these emotions. And, Sandra had mentioned coming at it from a mother's perspective and just being able to support your children in any way that you can. So for the children who are listening, I think finding a trusted adult to talk to is a really great way to help you through some of these tricky feelings that you might be having in these situations. Well, I really appreciate the three of you for being here today. We do have a couple questions that we're going to move into from our audience. And the first one is for Shermaine. Oh, she answered it, but I'm going to put it out there for everyone. Lisa May asked, what was because you moved around so much, what was one of your favorite country or states to visit? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about why.
My absolute favorite place was Naples, Italy. We moved there it was the end of 4th grade going into 5th grade. That was the 3rd school that year, 2 different countries. And I just fell in love with Italian culture. I love the food. I love the people. I mean, I picked up a new language. And since we were already speaking Spanish and English at home, Italian is very similar to Spanish. So I was, okay, good. I don't have to fight to learn this the way I had to really work hard to learn Turkish when we lived in Turkey. So part of the curriculum for the military schools is something called host nation, where you have to learn the customs of the nation that is hosting you, literally host nation. And so you're learning the food, the language, the customs, and more about the people so you can have a well-rounded experience. When we moved to Italy, I just fell in love. I still say ciao when I leave people. I mean, I just love everything about it. Who doesn't love the great food? So my first book is taking us from Georgia to Italy, just because that was one of my favorite experiences. And it didn't take me 6 months to feel like I love this place. It was like 3 months, and I said, oh yeah, I'm ready to stay here. And I would write my friends back home where we lived before, and the teacher it was really good because the teacher was instrumental in constantly sending letters to and from. When I would write a letter to my teacher, he would read it to the class. They would all write letters, they'd send it back. So it was one of those positive moving experiences, as opposed to feeling like you were being dragged across the world when you were much younger.
And there's another question asking if you still have some long distance relationships with people that you met through your different moves. Shermaine. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So we actually have a lot of great Facebook groups. I mean, with lots of people. My best, closest, and longest relationships are with other military kids like myself, because you cannot talk to somebody for 5 years and pick up, and everybody understands life is busy. There is not, this contention because you didn't talk every day. And so I talked to a friend recently. I said, you're going to be in town? I'm in Atlanta. And just like that, we stay connected. So my best relationships are solely with those that were also inside the base walls. I have other friends too, but we stay in touch. I mean, everybody from high school stays in touch because, your world is different and you can go back to those moments and really connect again. Middle school, high schoolers. Some of the friends I've made outside the base walls, they're wonderful, but everybody's life has kind of really taken a far left or right turn, and things that we wouldn't think would divide us. Everybody else is just like, oh, wait, you remember that ice cream? I remember that ice cream. And we used to go to that place. And just like that, we relive those moments to just really enjoy life again.
Sandra, what do you think about your girls? Kept friendships and relationships?
They were always so mad at me. The funny thing is that I grew up in a really small town, and by the way, Shermaine, that was beautiful. I really love that story. I grew up in a really small town in Wyoming, less than 100 my graduating class. I knew them all by name. Everybody knows everybody, which can have its own little problems. But so when my daughters were growing up, I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity for you. You're going to be everything I want to do. You get to do. And they're like, I want to live in a small town and I want to know my people. I want to feel connected. I'm like, no, it's not. And it's funny that the grass is always greener. And, I don't have an answer to that. I know that I'm blessed to have been in this small town for 26 years. And I've also been blessed to travel all over. We didn't get to go overseas. My husband went on what's that word, Shermaine? Unaccompanied
tour.
Yeah. And So I was home. I was kind of like a single mom most of the time because he was always gone, and I used to say stuck with the kids. I don't mean it that way. But when you have 5 kids and you're there going, oh my God, I need a break. Anyway, so there were a lot more opportunities for my daughters than there ever were for me. But I think when you're living it, you just want some continuity and stuff, I'm assuming. I don't know. Shermaine could answer that, I guess. I found that every place we ever lived was beautiful. You could always, the middle of Mojave Desert, I'm like, oh, scorpions in your ovens and snakes on your floor. And but the sunsets are beautiful. You can't replace the sunset on the desert. And I found a place, everywhere we went, I found beauty in everything and beauty in the people. So, and we're all alike. And the other thing about the military is, in my experience, there was no separation, cultures and whatnot. If you were in the military, you were family. So that was nice. That was a good reality, I think.
There was 2 things you said. We're all very alike. That is so true. I mean, at the core, we all are human beings with feelings and with likes and dislikes, and looking at the grass is always greener. And then the other thing you said is, if you're in the military, you're family. And I think that's really beautiful, because it's another community, like a church community or a soccer community. It's another form of community. So this was wonderful. I thank you for your time, ladies. And I'm just so thankful to have this resource for, different classrooms in the fall, and for different students to be able to tune in, and families. Parents can get a lot from this. It's just, thank you so much for your time. And for those of you tuning in today, let's give a big round of applause for our speakers. Look at their faces. They are smiling and they are thankful. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
And we will
Bye.
send out the replay, and we'll make sure that your website, so that people can get connected to your books, are all included. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.